The classroom was supposed to be a place of learning, a place of safety. But on that day, it became a stage for cruelty. Whispers turned into laughter, and laughter turned into an attack that no one saw coming. A young black girl, bright, determined, full of dreams, found herself at the center of humiliation, mocked and cornered by those who saw difference as weakness. The teachers turned away. The students stayed silent. It seemed like she had no escape. But what happened in the next few moments would flip the script entirely, transforming a story of pain into one of strength, justice, and unforgettable regret. Her name was Maya, a 15-year-old girl who carried herself with quiet strength. She wasn't the loudest in class nor the most popular, but she was smart, brilliant even. Maya loved books, loved the idea of becoming a lawyer one day, someone who could fight for people who had no voice. She believed that education was her ticket to freedom, to a future where her skin color wouldn't determine her worth. But in her school, the reality was far from that dream. The hallways buzzed with unspoken divisions. Groups formed not just by interest or personality, but by race, by background, by who was seen as belonging and who wasn't. Maya quickly realized she was one of the few black students in her grade, and the target was painted on her back. It started small, whispers as she walked past, snickers when she raised her hand to answer a question. Her accomplishments dismissed as luck or cheating. She tried to ignore it, tried to keep her head high. But cruelty has a way of spreading, and with each day, it grew louder. The teachers noticed. How could they not? But their silence was deafening. Maybe they didn't want to cause trouble. Maybe they thought it would go away on its own. Either way, Maya was left alone. Still, she held on to her dream. She studied harder, stayed later at the library, and promised herself she wouldn't give in. But what she didn't know was that the day was coming when the bullying would boil over, and everything would change. It happened on a Monday morning, the kind of day that already felt heavy. The sky outside was gray, the air tense, and inside the classroom, whispers began even before the first bell rang. Maya took her seat, her books neatly stacked, her homework ready to turn in. She tried to block it out. The giggles, the muttered insults, the way eyes darted toward her as though she were an alien in her own school. The ringleader of it all was a boy named Tyler. He was popular, confident, and cruel in ways that made others laugh instead of question. Where he went, his followers trailed behind, feeding off his arrogance. That morning, Tyler seemed determined to put on a show. It started with paper balls tossed at her desk. Then came whispers loud enough for everyone to hear. "Why are you even here? You don't belong." His words struck harder than the paper, each one designed to strip her of dignity. The class laughed. Even those who didn't hate her laughed, because laughter was safer than standing alone. Maya clenched her fists under the desk. She told herself to stay calm, to focus on her work. But then, Tyler crossed the line. He walked up to her desk, grabbed her notebook, and flipped it open. The room erupted as he mocked her handwriting, her careful notes. Then he ripped a page out and crumpled it. Something inside Maya cracked, not just from the destruction of her work, but from the humiliation of having her effort, her very existence, treated as a joke. Then came the final blow. Tyler tipped her desk, sending her books crashing to the floor. Gasps filled the room, but no one moved. The teacher, sitting at the desk, simply looked down, pretending to grade papers. Maya was on the floor, surrounded by scattered notes and laughter. Her heart pounded, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, to hide, to disappear. But in that moment, something else rose up inside her. Not fear, not shame, but fire. Because Maya wasn't just a girl with dreams. She was the daughter of an FBI agent, a man who taught her to stand tall, to know her worth, to never let cruelty define her. And while she had stayed silent until now, silence was no longer an option. She stood up slowly, her books still on the ground, her desk still overturned. The room buzzed with laughter, but her eyes were steady. She looked at Tyler, then at the teacher, and then at every face in the room. And then, without a word, she walked to the corner of the classroom where the school's security camera blinked red. Everyone froze. Tyler's smirk faltered, because for the first time, it wasn't her word against theirs. The entire attack, every insult, every shove, every laugh had been recorded. Maya didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply gathered her things, stood tall, and left the room. But the silence she left behind was louder than any scream. Within hours, the truth was out. The footage spread to the principal, to parents, to the district. The bullies who thought they owned the classroom suddenly found themselves cornered. Suspensions were handed out, disciplinary action enforced. Parents were called, meetings were held, and the facade of just kids being kids crumbled under the undeniable proof of what had been allowed to happen. For Maya, the humiliation of the morning became the spark of her empowerment. She hadn't needed fists or insults to fight back. She had the truth and the courage to stand by it. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in school shifted. For once, people looked at Maya not with mockery, but with respect. Some students, ashamed of their silence, whispered apologies. Others, emboldened by her strength, began to question the culture of cruelty they had allowed to thrive. The teacher who had turned away was placed under investigation. And Tyler, once untouchable, walked the halls with his head lowered, his arrogance stripped bare. The tables had turned. But for Maya, it wasn't about revenge, it was about proving something greater. That silence can be broken, that cruelty can be confronted, and that even in the loneliest moments, resilience has power. She returned to class the next week, not as a victim, but as a survivor. She raised her hand, answered questions, and reclaimed the space that was always hers. And while scars remained, emotional ones, invisible to the eye, they fueled her determination even more. The girl who once dreamed of becoming a lawyer now carried a story of injustice and courage that would follow her into adulthood. A story that reminded her why fighting for justice mattered. Because in that classroom, on that day, the world learned something important. Racism hides in silence, thrives in cruelty, and survives in complacency. But it only takes one act of courage to tear it apart. So the question remains for anyone watching, for anyone listening. When the moment comes, when you see injustice unfold before your eyes, will you stay silent or will you stand?